Guys, Comic Boom here to review Batman issue 51. Guys, the wedding is over, or rather the non-wedding is over. It never took place. Selina's taken off. She's left Gotham. She's left Bruce Wayne. She's in her own series, Catwoman #1, written by Joelle Jones. And as we reviewed that one, it was very clear that Selina's having a hard time getting over the fact that that wedding never took place. Selina's heartbroken. And it's quite clear, I think, given Bruce Wayne's actions in Batman #51, which we're going to get to, that he's pretty upset too. And he's having a very difficult time dealing with it. And we discover that through Bruce Wayne in jury duty involving a case where Bruce Wayne as Batman takes down Mr. Freeze. Guys, very interesting story here. Now, I have to say up front, we have to suspend belief, logic, and common sense on multiple levels, as we often do on many of Tom King's stories. Again, I like some Tom King stories. I love about 2 or 3 of them, but some of them are just plain not very good. The wedding issue was awful. That was not well written. This one is extremely questionable as well. But let's get to it, okay? Now, here's the thing. This is not a complicated issue at all. It's beautifully drawn by Lee Weeks. And Lee Weeks, by the way, is that fantastic artist who did a lot of the art in Batman Annual #2, along with Clayman, if I recall. And basically, this is basically premised like a 12 Angry Men story. For those of you who like classic movies, James Stewart did a movie called 12 Angry Men, where he basically is sort of the lone juror out of the 12 people on a jury that believe initially that a defendant is innocent, and by the end of the movie, the defendant is ultimately, all 12 jurors are convinced that the defendant is not guilty. Well, this is sort of Tom King's play on that, and essentially, Bruce Wayne is called for jury duty. Now, right up front, we got to suspend belief, because there's no way that Bruce Wayne would ever be chosen to be a jury. He would not be chosen to be a member of a jury where Mr. Freeze or anything involving Batman, Bruce Wayne wouldn't be picked. That doesn't make any sense given the continuity in the DC universe, because for multiple reasons, and this has been stated on Twitter and all over the place. We know that Bruce Wayne has funded Batman Incorporated. Bruce Wayne has had multiple interactions with Batman financially in terms of funding and other ways, which is certainly known by Commissioner Gordon or suspected. And there's all kinds of other connections that there's no way that Bruce Wayne would ever be put on a jury where the accused was Mr. Freeze, and Mr. Freeze's defense was basically, I didn't do it, Batman made me confess. I mean, the conflict there would be obvious, but what do you do? That's just the way it is. You really got to suspend your belief for that. And Tom King does that. He forces past that. Basically, his justification is everybody in Gotham has come in contact with Batman. Everyone has some affiliation with Batman in Gotham City. So you can't just eliminate any potential jury member who's had a potential who's had connection with Batman, because that would be pretty much everybody. That's sort of what Tom King suggests, which is, of course, absurd. But in any event, I'll let that go. Let's look at the rest of the story. So now we have Bruce Wayne, a member of the jury, and basically Mr. Freeze is on trial and for apparently murdering 3 women. Now here's where it gets kind of interesting, because the 3 women that were murdered, and we're getting tidbits of what actually took place, and we might be getting tidbits. This is a 3-issue tale. This is only the first of a 3-issue arc. Called Cold Days, dealing with this case against Mr. Freeze with Bruce Wayne being on jury duty. And these 3 women that Mr. Freeze is being accused of murdering, apparently there was initially the pathologist who did forensics for the Gotham City Police Department, he didn't believe it was a murder. It took Batman to discover something that apparently the 3 women that were murdered, the 3 women that were dead, they had some sort of some tamperings or some sort of temperature drop on their brain stems right before they died, apparently. And Batman told this to Commissioner Gordon, and Commissioner Gordon had the forensics independently evaluated to confirm what Batman said, of course, in his Batman sophisticated Batcave, presumably. Okay, got to read all this into it. And on the basis of that, they laid murder charges against Mr. Freeze. But Mr. Freeze, testifies under oath that he always in the past always admitted when he did something wrong, when he was caught, because Mr. Freeze was always he's always been the guy who's been obsessed with reviving his dead Nora, like his dead wife Nora, right? He's always been obsessed with trying to find a way to overcome overcome scientifically the obstacles involved in reviving someone who's basically frozen in ice, right? He wants to revive, he froze his wife Nora, and he wants to be able to revive her one day, right? And so in pursuit of that, he has killed a lot of people, but he's insistent that he never killed these 3 women, and that the only reason that he confessed was because Batman, for whatever reason, he never saw Batman like that. When Batman took him out, he never saw Batman so angry. He never saw Batman freak out like that, and he confessed. And what's interesting about that is Bruce Wayne, hearing this, is stone-faced. He's listening to Mr. Freeze's testimony. He's stone-faced. And during a break in the trial, there's one scene in particular. It's kind of funny. Bruce Wayne goes to the bathroom to take a break while the he's with the members of the jury, and they're having lunch, and he excuses himself to go to the washroom. He goes into the washroom and he rips the urinal off the wall. He's that angry. And you know that clearly Bruce Wayne must be angry with himself. Why is he so angry? Now, what's interesting is that Selina over in Catwoman #1, she was very angry. She's very heartbroken and angry with herself over in Catwoman #1, and that prompted her to go after all the women that were copycatting her and impersonating her and causing her chaos in her own adventures in Catwoman #1. And you can go look at my review for that or pick up the comic yourself. So while Selina's struggling in that respect, clearly Bruce Wayne here, Batman, is having some struggles with this himself. And it forces the reader to wonder, especially if you're coming into this after Batman #50, it forces the reader to wonder, did Bruce Wayne or did Batman cross a line? Maybe Batman, in his anger, really did miss something. In his anger flowing out of his failed marriage, or the non-wedding, the wedding that never took place. Maybe Batman is so angry at the New York Times that he freaked out and that he missed something, and that maybe Mr. Freeze really is innocent, because Bruce Wayne himself, the jury members at the end of this comic take a vote, and all 11 think Mr. Freeze is guilty because there's a bias, and most of the jury members think it's Batman. Batman wouldn't lie, right? Mr. Freeze must be guilty. But the one person that thinks Mr. Freeze might be not guilty is Bruce Wayne himself. And that's what makes it very interesting. And it makes you wonder, is there something that Batman missed? Is it something that maybe flowing out of the wedding, that Batman was psychologically compromised, it affected the way he was being a Batman, he missed something, and maybe Mr. Freeze is guilty. Maybe he was too hard. Maybe he did use excessive force on Mr. Freeze. We don't know. But clearly Bruce Wayne himself has doubts. And I don't know, maybe this is a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde sort of thing, but it is interesting in that regard from a psychological angle. So in that respect, this story interests me in that regard. There are other holes in it that if you, as I said, Bruce Wayne being sequestered on jury duty on this, I find that is somewhat hard to believe. And there's other things you got to suspend your belief on, but but Tom King very clearly is looking at this from a psychological angle. He wants to get us into the heads of Bruce Wayne, because Bruce Wayne is struggling with this. He's struggling probably with his role as Batman. He was, Tom King at least, he did an interview with John Cetris on Word Balloon, and he basically, this is a 100-issue story arc. Batman just had a non-wedding. Selina just left him. Batman maybe is psychologically compromised. We know that Bane is slowly trying to psychologically affect Batman, to psychologically destroy Batman, and forcing Batman to question himself, question his methods, question who he is, question how he does things. This is all part of undoubtedly Bane trying to hammer down the Batman. And we got to remember that we know that Bane has control of substantially most all the villains of Arkham Asylum. The Joker, even the Batman from Flashpoint, and Holly Robinson, and the Riddler, and Clayface. All of those people, the Bane has control of. So it's reasonable to assume that Bane also has some influence on Mr. Freeze and what Mr. Freeze might be testifying to. all as a way of battering down Batman. And so, from this angle, this is I think that's interesting in that regard. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. So, guys, my recommendation is, despite some spectacular suspensions of beliefs necessary to get into issue 51, I would suggest you do it because you'll enjoy the story more and enjoy the psychological elements of this story as it progresses into this what will be a 3-issue arc. And until next time, I hope you're all enjoying San Diego Comic-Con, or at least watching the news that flows out from it. And in the meantime, till the next review, hit the subscribe button. Follow me up on Twitter at Comic Boom at Metropolis40. And till then, Comic Boom out.